Well, thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining today, and thank you for participating in this important discussion. And we are really glad for your cooperation with all the emails and notifications that have been going out. We have a really tight agenda and schedule, so we can get started. I want to acknowledge my co-hosts, Kale Roberts and Angie Fai, who are with ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiative. And this summit is hosted in partnership with them. So I really want to thank them for their time and help in organizing this session. Thank you, Kale and Angie. So we can get started. Introduction. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure and let people in. Okay, we can get started. I want to say thank you to our president, Dr. Lim, for his introduction and opening remarks. Unfortunately, he had a board meeting, so he could not attend in person, but he has recorded his remarks, and we can play the video for you now. Sarah? And Kale, you can take over from here.
Hello, and thank you for participating in today's North Texas Local Food Dialogue on Inclusive Food Systems. I am Teik, Interim President of the University of Texas at Arlington. On behalf of UTA, it is my pleasure to welcome you as we have collaborative, constructive, solution-based conversations on food sustainability and security for the North Texas region. In case you're not aware, UTA is the largest higher ed institution in North Texas, and we are proud to be the fifth most diverse institution in the country, as well as both a Hispanic serving and an Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving Carnegie R1 highest research activity institution, and also a recently designated Texas Tier 1 institution. UTA is privileged to partner with International Council for Local Environmental Initiative to host this summit as we connect representatives in science, business, healthcare, and academia with farmers, ranchers, local governments, activists, and other stakeholders, working together to capture and contribute local input to national and global efforts to build sustainable, equitable, nutrition-based food systems. As experts in sustainability, you know that a sustainable food system delivers food security and nutrition without compromising economic, social, and environmental sources. This means that a sustainable food system is profitable. That is to say, it has economic sustainability. It has broad-based benefits for society or social sustainability. And it has a positive or at least neutral impact on the natural environment, offering environmental sustainability. North Texas is in urgent need of resilient, sustainable food systems that support public health and well-being through collaboration among the private, public, and nonprofit sectors as they share resources, knowledge, and expertise while educating the public and garnering its support. The North Texas Food Policy Alliance, or NTFPA, is newly launched and established by the University of Texas at Arlington. According to the Food Policy Network, a project of the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, less than 5% of all the food policy councils in the United States are embedded within universities and academic institutions. UTA is very proud to be one of those few, and we are pleased to play a prominent role in establishing this alliance in support of equitable and resilient food system in North Texas. NTFPA brings together an abundance of expertise across multiple sectors to work toward a common mission, to foster regional collaboration in order to develop sustainable and equitable food system in North Texas. This diverse group of partners ranges from community leaders and city government to public health and community nonprofit organizations to educational institutions. Collectively, NTFPA's 42 partnering organizations represent the 16 counties in North Texas, bringing location-based experience and deep technical knowledge together to work toward our goal of sustainable and equitable food systems. Not surprisingly, education is a driving purpose behind everything we do at UTA. With this summit and dialogue, we hope to provide a platform for meaningful ongoing exchange within our region while supporting the efforts of local government bodies, nonprofits, and related organizations that are dedicated to this cause. Since education is an essential component of delivering sustainable food system, UTA is uniquely positioned to bring our region's key stakeholders to the table as we work together to achieve our common goal. So, to summarize our collective purpose, the mission of the North Texas Food Policy Alliance is to foster regional collaboration to develop sustainable and equitable food systems in North Texas. We envision a North Texas with sustainable and equitable food system that will end hunger and ensure health and well-being for all. Allow me to share some timely and telling statistics. 1 in 7 Texans experienced food insecurity before the pandemic. 5 million Texans, the highest of any state, live in food deserts, one of the highest rates in the US. A third of Texans are overweight because of an imbalanced diet and therefore at risk of obesity, diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Women, children, people of color, refugees, and vulnerable groups are disproportionately affected. In Texas, small farmers, ranchers, and agri-food businesses were struggling even before the pandemic because they earn only 15 cents of every dollar spent on food production. Interestingly, that 15 cents on the dollar is less than half of what food producers receive for their goods 20 years ago. Only 8% of food grown locally is sold locally. The rest travels long distances throughout the United States, adding cost inefficiencies and waste. Meanwhile, US food imports have nearly doubled in the past 10 years. A third of all food is wasted, while millions struggle with food insecurity. Limited access to fresh, healthy food is a complex challenge calling for comprehensive, coordinated solutions. The North Texas population is projected to more than double from the current 7.2 million residents by the year 2050. In this rapid growth scenario, all sectors in our regions have great concerns that prompt the questions: how will North Texas fare as it confronts the growing population projection and the associated environmental, economic, and social challenges that are sure to follow? The need and urgency is clear, and today's dialogue is intended to be our regional opportunity to compile an official contribution from North Texas cities and counties to the proceedings of the United Nations Food Systems Summit. We aim to collate interests, issues, and priorities of local governments on food sustainability, security, and resilience, and submit our alliance's outcomes to both the U.S. Department of Agriculture at the federal level and the Food and Agriculture Organization at the global level. As you convene today, I want to thank you and your organization for participating. I would like to acknowledge the City of Dallas, the City of Plano, Blue Zones Fort Worth, North Central Texas Councils of Governments, North Texas Food Bank, American Heart Association, Feed Oak Cliff, and Restorative Farms. I appreciate your commitment to advancing our region's sustainable food systems and for your active participation and engagement today. Everyone's involvement is essential and valued. So as our Alliance members ponder and address questions like, what are the challenges facing the food systems in your city? What steps are you taking to address these challenges? And what vision and priorities do you have for your future food system 10 years from now? I'm confident the collective knowledge and expertise among those participating today will yield many innovative, game-changing ideas and solutions. For example, UTA offers a food pantry to address and help food insecurity amongst our diverse students. While around 13% of US households were food insecure pre-pandemic, campus studies suggest that as much as 59% of students experience food insecurity at some point in their college careers. Campus food pantries possess room for progress as well. Beyond providing food, pantries offer a point of connection for struggling students, a chance to check in on the numerous challenges that accompany food insecurity, from health and housing issues to barriers to academic success. I'm looking forward to learning about the outcome of today's summit and seeing how it influences future dialogue on the national and international landscape. On behalf of the University of Texas at Arlington, thank you once again for your presence and your contribution today. And I wish you a collaborative, productive, insightful discussion that creates the solutions of tomorrow.
Great, thank you, Meghna. And thank you to President Lim for setting the scene and really, I think, doing a great job of showing why it makes a lot of sense that University of Texas at Arlington would serve this role as a convener on the path toward the UN's Food Systems Summit. So as the president said, this is a big year for food policy and thinking about sustainable regional food systems. ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, where I work as a senior program officer, is so proud to partner with University of Texas at Arlington to be here with all of you in the most regional event that serves to inform the global work, the global conversation that's going on around food systems this year. So we'll get into the rest of our program. Meghna will explain a little bit more about what that will look like today, but I'm happy to introduce our next speaker to give some kind of positioning remarks. Peter DeFranceschi is the head of the ICLEI Brussels office and also serves globally as our food program coordinator. Peter's worked all year long in the lead up to the UN Food Systems Summit, working with communities all over the world to kind of collect and collate the voices on the ground for what a sustainable food system should and could look like. It was only a few months ago that Meghna and Peter and the ICLEI team hosted a North American dialogue on inclusive food systems that really served to bring equity and inclusion forward in this whole process this year. So it's even better, to bring that closer down to the ground at a very regional level here in North Central Texas. And I'm happy to turn it over to Peter to talk a little bit more about that whole process. So Peter, over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Cale. As an Italian, I want to emphasize I'm not just working all day long, all year long. I'm also eating and cooking, trying healthy and good food. So good morning, Texas. I'm looking at a wet afternoon sky here in Brussels, Belgium. Very pleased to talk to you and say a few words about the UN Food Systems Summit, our engagement in terms of urban food systems and game changers, and an outlook. But before diving into the UN Food Systems Summit, let me emphasize that we are very aware that the UN Food Systems Summit is not a, how shall I say, birthday party, if I may say so. For some, indeed, the Food Systems Summit is not enough inclusive. Other important stakeholders even boycott it. Others find it too much top-down. But for us, I must say, as a network, as an association of local government, we've seen it as an opportunity too important not to engage. After all, more than half of us humans live now in cities and towns, and more than 70% of the food is eaten in the cities, and a lot also wasted there. So it was clear for us it's important to engage and make sure that urban resilient food systems are recognized, empowered, and supported. Now back to the UN Food Systems Summit. Overall, I might say it's definitely not a summit in a sense. There is this event and that's it. It's more of a journey. And even though I grew up in the Dolomites and the Italian Alps, I must say that it's quite a journey lot of things going on, also uncertainty, lots of complexities, as you can imagine, in such a setting. So overall, the UN Food System Summit, as you know, it will be held during the UN General Assembly in New York on September 23rd, so very soon. And it's setting the stage for a global food system transformation to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So what will be the outcome of this UN Food System Summit? In brief, it will be a statement of action after all this collective intelligence gathering, all these stakeholder engagements and the events, the so-called independent dialogues. And this statement of action of the UN Secretary General will then offer ambitious and optimistic vision for the role food systems can play in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. There will be also a large number of member states making commitments on the food system transformation. And there will be several so-called global coalitions on different topics. What we tried to do as ICLEI, but also together with other stakeholders around the urban food systems and cities, is we gathered in an ad hoc urban food system working group that was co-led by the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, GAIN. And this working group comprised several UN and civil society organizations, 26. There were also city networks like C40, UCLG, ICLEI, the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact Research Institute. And over the past more than 6 months, we engaged in a lot of dialogues. For instance, with FAO, as in ICLEI, we had independent dialogues around food systems in 26 cities around the globe, one also in the US. And more than 1,000 participants participated. So there's really a wealth of information, of recommendations, of stories that were shared. And on top of these, consultations happened in more than 52 cities. And what we also did is trying to submit game-changing solution. That's how they were called, like something that would really drive and accelerate the implementation of resilient, sustainable food systems. From our side, it was particularly on food procurement, on school nutrition, because for us, that's really a low-hanging fruit, because it can connect all the different sustainable development goals in one public plate. After all, healthy food, for instance, in schools, it's about public health implementation. It's about biodiversity. If you think about organic food, biodiversity, it's about culture. And it's about also climate change if we consider more plant-rich food or less food waste, just to mention a few examples. So in this process and journey so far, we spoke we had the Global Summit Dialogue on Urban Food Systems, and also at the pre-summit, I had the privilege to talk on behalf of this Urban Food System Working Group and convey the messages of the cities of all these dialogues. And we also nominated 3 cities as champions and, in a way, ambassadors on urban food systems, and that was the city of Copenhagen, then Izmir in Turkey, and Quelimane, Mozambique, and they basically acted as champions on Urban Food System Summit. Now, key points were mainly around multi-level governance, because it is clear that local governments cannot do this, implement resilient urban food systems without national governments, and national governments cannot do it without local governments. I mean, what Joe Biden, Angela Merkel, or Bolsonaro have in common, they're national governments, but yet they live in cities. And if in cities there is no access to healthy food systems, if there's not equity, if there is not healthy food environments around, I mean, or emergencies, the citizens, they don't go to the president, they go to the mayor, they don't go to the local government. And the local government can do a lot of things, but they need the support of higher levels. So another important aspect was the procurement that I mentioned, the school nutrition but also food waste, as well as emergency planning. So these were like key areas where we try to bring in ideas on what can be game changers. On a positive side, I could say that a lot of dialogues happened with many participation. Also the game changers that we submitted, they came true. There is a coalition now, a global one, being led by a World Food Program on school food nutrition, linked to biodiversity, linked to health and education. And there has been a lot of talks also between the, I would say maybe also for the first time at such a scale, between the local and the national governmental level around food systems. But where we are not yet there is in really having a sustainable, resilient urban food systems and policies prominently, let's say, recognized at this top level. So empowered and supported. There we are still working on it, and in that sense, it is a journey. But there are several upcoming events also on this journey where we'll continue striving for a coalition of cities together with national governments to support these urban food systems. So the next steps are really into the continuation of this urban food system working group, of building ideally a coalition of national governments and local governments together to continue exploring ways to support, empower cities and towns around the globe in supporting urban food systems. The next, let's say, stations on this journey will be on one hand a summit in Japan at the end of the year, the Nutrition for Growth Summit, but also the COP, the Conference of Parties in Climate. You may have heard of the Glasgow Food Declaration, which tries to link food and climate. And there are also several others where we will, together with cities, strive for it. Because to sum up, for us, this is crucial because it's clear that the way to urban food systems goes through the cities in this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter, for your time and sharing your thoughts about how to have an equitable and resilient food system and the conversation and giving it a global context in terms of the food summit and the conversations that's happening at COP and the food summit that you mentioned in Japan. We have a lot to learn, and I'm glad that North Texas is starting this conversation. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay. So our next speaker is Dr. Alison Blais-Palmer. She is the UNESCO chair and in food diversity, biodiversity, and sustainability studies. And she is also the founder and the director for the Laurie Center for Sustainable Food Systems and a professor in geography and environmental studies at the Wilfrid Laurier University. So her research and teaching combines her passion on sustainable food systems, and I've seen some of her talks and recordings at a previous dialogues that she presented. And she fosters community engagement and innovative governance model for food systems. She collaborates with academics and practitioners on ongoing research, such as the City Region Food System, Climate Resilience and Resource Center on Urban Agriculture and Food Security, and the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organizations focused on food security, health, and climate change in the Northwest Territories. Alison, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to get to hear about all the amazing things that you're thinking about doing in North Texas. This is really motivating for me. This is why we do what we do, right? Peter, I'm sure, would say the same thing. Yeah, and Magna too, obviously. And I just want to congratulate your university and also ICLEI for engaging in these important conversations. And I think one of the things that I'd like to do in my brief 10 minutes is just pull together a couple of things that your acting president mentioned and also that Peter mentioned, because I think one of the opportunities that we have in having these food system summit dialogues is to, can you see my screen, Magna?
Yes.
Or, yeah, okay,
yes,
super. Is to really bring together, cities are obviously important crucibles where change is happening, because as Peter said, there's a lot of population concentration. That's where the food mostly gets eaten, but it also waste is created. But if we see cities within a regional context, which is what you are doing in North Texas, so I really applaud you for this, because what you're doing is you're connecting where your food could be coming from as a local food system with people who are eating the food. And I think that that's a really important approach to take and recognize as being at the heart of both the challenges that we're facing in food systems, but also where the solutions lie. So as Peter was saying, we can bring a lot, and as your research and your outline for today indicates, food is a lever for change, not just in terms of food security and nutrition, but also for climate change, for biodiversity, and for bringing all of those important things together. So what I'd like to do is just offer some insights about what the Food System Summit Dialogues can do, and recognizing as well the cautions that Peter put on the table. There is pushback, and justifiably, because there is an opportunity to include more human rights-based conversations and agroecological production methods in the UN Food System Summit conversations, and maybe have civil society driving the conversation more than private companies. But that said, it's an important process, and it needs to be engaged with. So the potential is to offer an entry point for more integrated and sustainable territorial development that can include city and regions. And I think this is important because it offers the chance to provide practical solutions that can link these two spaces together. As Peter said, Peter talked about multi-scalar, but I would also suggest multi-stakeholder. And this came up very strongly in your acting president's talk about the way that really everybody needs to be sitting at the table. And when we bring everybody to the table, everybody needs to have the same ability to speak and be heard. And that's really critical, especially when we're engaging with communities that may not feel as confident saying what they have to say. So that's a really important thing when we're talking about multi-stakeholder dialogues. And if we can do that successfully, and it's a challenge for sure, there's an opportunity to develop a shared vision, coordinated action that everybody buys into. So if everybody buys into it, it's very likely to be taken up because it's what people want. And then communicate out those important initiatives to the broader food system. So I'm just going to draw on some insights that have emerged as a result of COVID and some of the lessons that we've seen. Obviously, we know, especially from COVID, as we sought to seek more localized food systems, and we had to distance ourselves from the global in some ways, that cities are really the high density flashpoints. And this pointed to the value of local food chains, including regional and urban production systems. So all the way from rural through peri-urban into urban settings. And also, in many cases, the importance of informal market arrangements. So things that are happening off the sides of people's desks and that kind of thing, and then may not be institutionalized. These can also be important places to explore opportunities. As was said before, we need to have local action that's supported by both national and global contexts. And there's opportunities that have really emerged around IT and having sort of online farmers markets and that kind of thing. So if you're looking for a really great open source example of that, I would encourage you to look to Open Food Network. There are branches of Open Food Network in the United States and around the world that you could look at as a possible solution for connecting those spaces. In terms of processes and tools, as I mentioned before, multi-stakeholder is really important. It's also important to have a rights-based, system-centered planning so that we have the people's rights at the foundation. So people have the right to food and they can get access to culturally appropriate food, but that we're also seeing the system, the food system, as part of our work. And that's a challenging thing because the food system is incredibly complicated. It gives us lots of opportunities because it's a system, but it also gives us lots of challenges and things that get woven together. And when you try to solve problems, it's not straightforward. Part of that is having the built infrastructure to support small scale farmers and businesses. So what we need to make sure of is those small scale businesses, processors, distributors, going into institutional procurement, that everybody has access to those markets. That's very important. There's also incredible knowledge in terms of traditional and indigenous foods systems and foodways, for example, agroecology. And these offer lots of opportunities for moving forward because they work within the environment, the existing environment that's so critical. So they really give us a place-based relevant amount of kinds of knowledge that we can work from. And then finally, we need to be able to track what's going on, right? So either through qualitative storytelling or benchmarking of that kind, or quantitative indicators, you know, you've got lots of good data on your food insecurity rates. Those are really important to track over time, so we know that we're making progress. Finally, as was mentioned before, there's lots of global opportunities that can be leveraged. So there's the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact and the 6 thematics within that. There's all kinds of great case studies that they have put together that you can look at. There's tons of information about what's going on with the Sustainable Development Goals. So this diagram over here, and how when you put food at the center of thinking about the SDGs, you really can solve a lot of problems. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's not as always easy, but it's something that we can do because it helps to solve lots of integrated challenges. So I think we've got this sort of continuous tidal wave that we're going to be facing over the next little while. So we've had COVID, we've got economic challenges that are facing the entire world, and we've also got climate change. You can see that as problems that cannot be solved, and some people do. But to my way of thinking, when we use food as a lever for change, we can address all of these things at the same time and really bring about meaningful, equitable change, transformation for the environment, improved biodiversity, and gender equity, better inclusion for BIPOC communities. So there's lots of things that we can do through food. So that's it. Thanks very much for having me. And back to you, Meghna. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alison. I'm really grateful to the comments made by President Lim, Alison, and Peter, and setting the tone for this summit and the conversation that we are going to have in the next 2 hours. You know, everybody talked about how this is part of a global conversation, and you know, systems thinking is the approach that has been applied to sustainability. Any research topic, any area of interest that you want to talk about, be about climate change, food systems, environmental justice, or energy efficiency. And I'm glad that, you know, North Texas and all the members who are present here are able to contribute to that dialogue and take the conversation forward. So we have a packed agenda, but I'm really very grateful for your comments and thoughts, Alison, and your comments and thoughts, Peter. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you can stay for the rest of the session. Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to the Food Summit that we have been planning and hosting this today in leading up to the conversation for the UN Food Summit that's happening on September 23rd. I'm very grateful to all the participants. I'm very grateful to ICLEI, Angie, and Kale for being partners in organizing this dialogue. But I also wanted to acknowledge and say my thanks to all the panelists who have devoted their time and come here and talk about what their organizations are doing to support food systems in the North Texas. So I wanted to give a shout out to Susan with the City of Dallas, Nicole with City of Plano, Brenda with the Blue Zones Project Fort Worth, Tamara Cook with North Central Texas Council of Governments for the panel one. And I wanted to thank and acknowledge Owen Lynch, who's the founder for Restorative Farms, Valerie with the North Texas Food Bank, Anga with the Feed Oak Cliff, and Jenny, who's the Vice President for American Heart Association. So thank you so much for your time and contribution today. I also wanted to give a shout out to our facilitators for the breakout rooms today, Sarah from the City of Plano, Sandy from UNT Health Science Center, and Stephanie from Schneider Electric. Thank you so much for helping us capture the conversation today so that we can present the findings and the conversation from today to everybody else in a meaningful way. I want to thank Sarah, who's our tech support for today, with ICLEI for helping us navigate the technical difficulties and running a smooth show. Thank you, Sarah. And last but not the least, I want to acknowledge and introduce Karina with ConverSketch. So like Allison said, it's important to have a good story, and it's important to capture that story so that you can communicate in a meaningful way with others, right?
Wow,
it's important
cool.
because what happens today, we have to share it with others, not just within the North Texas region, but outside of the region. So Karina is an expert, and she's going to capture the entire conversations from the panel discussions, the keynotes, and the breakout rooms in a graphic format. She has shared her screen, I think. But Karina, do you want to quickly share your space where you are capturing this graphically so people can follow it in real time if they're interested?
Sure, thanks, Meghna. Just really briefly, I'm going to show you my face. Hi, I'm Karina. I'm actually based in Fort Collins, Colorado, and a real appreciator of local food systems. So thank you for the work and the important conversations you're doing. Today, I get to listen to what you're sharing and capture it in a visual way, as Meghna said. So I'm here with my, my iPad, listening and drawing, and this will provide a different way to engage and look at the content. As we heard just now from Allison, that a lot of these things are really interconnected, and systems are not necessarily linear. So this is another way to support the thinking, reduce cognitive load, and tell your story. So delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And if you want to check, I'll be sharing my screen instead of my video feed. If you want to look at what I'm doing more closely, go ahead and just click on my window, and you can select pin video at any time. And then when you're done, click on it again and unpin video. But we'll be showing the screen every once in a while and sharing these afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you so much. So thank you all. We can get started. I'm going to hand it over to Angie and Kale to start the first panel discussion, which talks about ensuring food security, resilience, and equity in cities.
Thank you, Meghna. Hi, everyone. Angie Fife. I'm the Executive Director here at ICLEI USA. Thank you so much for being part of this dialogue. It's really an honor for us to partner with UT Arlington and all of you in this very important conversation. And now the fun part, we get to hear directly from the practitioners who are doing this work in communities. And then you'll all be invited to go into a breakout room where we will be able to hear from you. So we really look forward to that. Meghna briefly introduced our panelists here. Susan Alvarez, Assistant Director, City of Dallas. Nicole Warfenting, Seed Manager at the City of Plano. Brenda Patton, Director of Policies at the Blue Zones Project for North Texas Healthy Communities. And finally, Tamara Cook, who is a Senior Environment and Development Program Manager at the North Central Texas COG, who we also have a very special partnership and relationship with right now, working on a learning cohort with many cities on their greenhouse gas inventories. So I'm going to ask the panelists 3 questions. And in the first question, I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves again, tell us a little bit about themselves, and then answer the question. And so let's start with, what programs or initiatives do you have in your city or county or region to address food systems? I'm going to go backwards and ask Tamara to go first, please.
Okay, you threw me for a loop there, Angie. I was writing notes on what you wanted us to cover. But yes, I'm happy to go first. So yes, thank you to Meghna and the Food Policy Alliance, first off, for having COG here today. I am so excited to be a partner in these initiatives. And just a tiny bit about myself, I am a program manager here in the environmental department at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And for those who aren't familiar with what COG is, what we call it for short, what we do here, our membership is local governments. So cities and counties and other local government entities in our 16 county North Texas region. And we work to serve them to take on regional challenges that are shared amongst all of our partners and our members. And through those processes, we get to collaborate with a number of multi-sector partners that are out there, from nonprofits to private sector as well, and universities. So it's really exciting to be here and talking about food in particular. So related to the projects that we are currently working on, I'm going to set a little bit of quick context. Food waste, I know, has been mentioned several times by the speakers already, which is fantastic. It is a huge issue in our region. A recent audit from 2020 indicated that approximately 30% of our waste stream that is going into the bins in residential households and then going to the landfill is food waste. And that is huge. It is above the national average. And we have many efforts underway to sort of tackle that one challenge and problem. And I know it's a small piece of the larger food systems efforts underway here and talking about today, but it's an important one. And we've got a couple of studies underway right now. We are working with the Department of Energy through a technical assistance opportunity that they had, and looking at a site along the State Highway 121 corridor, the Sam Rayburn Tollway, also called that, and looking at potential locations for anaerobic digester and the food waste feedstocks that would be within a 25-mile radius of that kind of corridor area. And we're working with the city of Plano and the city of Louisville and the DFW International Airport and Toyota Motors North America on that project, because they all have unique interests in reducing their own food waste footprints, whether it's at their commercial campus or their headquarters campus in the case of Toyota, or within their city's footprint in the case of the cities, and similarly with the airport and their concessionaires with all the restaurants. So that's very exciting, and we're currently underway with DOE doing a cost benefit analysis on a potential project. And then we're also leading an EPA funded organic waste to fuel feasibility study with partners including UTA. UTA is actually a subrecipient of some of the funds, and will be helping us on some of the modeling that we're going to be doing. But really, this study will evaluate additional opportunities in the entire North Texas 16 county region to take food waste from different sectors and assess the feasibility and partnerships that may be available to eventually construct anaerobic digesters that produce renewable natural gas and fuel alternative fueled vehicles in our region, which there is always an increasing demand for, especially with the lens of climate and reducing greenhouse gas emissions as well, which I know has already been mentioned. So I will leave it at that. We've got so many other things, but I want to make sure that I'm keeping within my couple minutes.
Thank you, Tamara. Love the waste to energy programs and reducing waste as well. Look forward to talking more about that. How about over to Nicole? Tell us a bit about what's happening in your city.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nicole Warhoftig, and I'm the manager of sustainability and environmental education. And our division is part of environmental health and sustainability. So what my division does is we focus in all areas of sustainability. We do educational programs, teach classes, work with regional partners, again, in all areas of sustainability, and food waste and food recovery is one of those things that we want to tackle. And we did put it in our strategic plan for the next 3 years to look into that. It is something a little bit newer for Plano, so we're at the very early stages. So we're actually tackling the food recovery pyramid from many different angles, top to bottom, really. And as mentioned from several people today, it involves a lot of regional projects and working together on this. So Some of the ways that we're doing that, as Tamara mentioned, we are participating in the DOE Waste to Energy Technical Study for the anaerobic digester, and we're excited to see what's going to come of that. We have staff also participating in the North Texas Food Policy Council that Meghna started, and so that's in the early stages as well. One thing that we did put together a couple years ago we had an intern on staff for the summer, was a food match program. And they worked on creating a system where we're matching those with excess food to those that have the need for food. And it's a database. The idea of it is to have them really communicate with each other through an online system without us having to be the middleman. So we did get that set up. We haven't really done a whole lot to promote it. It's been a little bit challenging, and what we're learning with that is transportation is a huge problem. So it sounds super simple that you can match those with food and those that need food, but trying to get it from point A to point B is really the biggest challenge, is from what I'm understanding from a lot of different groups. So that's one thing that we have going, but what we're doing is building off of programs that we already have going on. So for instance, we're working with the COG on their Trash-Free Waters single-use plastic reduction campaign. And we are fortunate that part of our department are the environmental health inspectors who work very closely with local restaurants. And they already have established relationships with restaurants. So we just partnered with our other divisions in our department to work on the single-use plastic reduction, but in building those relationships, our goal is to also work with them on food reduction as we get down the road. So that's one angle that we're working on it. We do have our local community garden that we support, our division supports, and they donate food to local food pantries and food banks. And last year, there was a huge need for that with COVID, and they donated over 6,000 pounds, which was a record year for them. And we also promote sharing tables in our schools through our Green School Recognition Program. So we're kind of trying to hit it from a lot of different angles and kind of building on projects that we already have going on. Our Environmental Waste Services Division has been exploring purchasing a depackager. We used to do a lot more food recovery and composting from our local corporations, which had to be put on hold because of the whole PFAS and the dinnerware, the plates and the cups and the napkins, where we take our compost to our Texas Pier facility, no longer wanted to accept that. So that really put a big damper on our food waste collection program and composting. So our EWS has been really focusing on a depackager to try and help separate, the food waste from the packaging in order to clean that process up a bit. So I'll let it go there. Those are just a few things we have going on. So sorry if I went over time, but our goal is like I said, to really try and focus on the food waste and food recovery, building on programs that we already have going on. So
thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Yeah, we met some of the folks from Plano here in my office at the Alliance Center in Denver. The NRDC group was here doing some food recovery work. Maybe you were part of that group, Nicole. It's been a couple of years. Yeah, great. Super. Let's move over to Brenda. Tell us a bit about your work, please.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Brenda Espinosa Patton, and I'm the program director for Blue Zones Project Fort Worth. I also serve on the board for Tarrant County Food Policy Council, and I'm the chair for Healthy Tarrant County Collaboration, which are all organizations here working here in Tarrant County and that are also doing great work in our food system. But in my real paying job, I oversee food access policies and also programs. And currently we have 3 or 4 really major initiatives that I'll talk about today. I'll focus on that. We operate healthy food pantries in 9 community-based locations. Yes.
There's a lot of echo. Can you move the mic a little bit away?
Is that better?
Sure.
No? Is this better?
No, sure. There's just a lot of echo when you're talking.
Yeah, my house is empty.
No worries.
Okay, sorry about that. No, that's okay. So we operate 9 healthy food pantries in different locations in Fort Worth. We also do the Double Up Food Bucks program, which doubles the value of SNAP dollars for the purchase of fruits and veggies at 1 farmer's market and 3 grocery stores. And we also have a produce recovery effort at 3 grocery stores, which connects the cold produce from the grocery store to area farmers to use for their compost. And we are also working on the piece to be able to connect that cold produce that is still perfectly safe and edible to our pantries. And we also, since the start of the pandemic, we began fresh food distribution at 13 community centers here in Fort Worth for the youth and the seniors that attend the center programming. And, you know, all of these programs is part of what we do, but at the bottom of it, we also advocate for policy changes at the city level that remove some of these barriers and optimize the food environment for our residents. And this also includes working with Safe Routes to School, Safe Routes to Healthy Food, and advocating for alternative modes of transportation. So it's kind of a holistic approach to a healthier lifestyle, healthier options for our residents. And lastly, I'll say that all of the work that I get to do, we do in collaboration with various organizations, some of the ones that I mentioned, and lots of other ones that are doing great work here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. Thanks for all that great work. It's great to have super nonprofit partners on the ground. So finally, wrapping up our intro here, Susan, over to you, please.
Hi, good morning. This is Sue Alvarez. I am the Assistant Director for the Office of Environmental Quality at the City of Dallas. And I am humbled to be on this panel with humbled and like a little bit of we're not worthy. Lots of great ideas. I'm here basically from a climate perspective. The City of Dallas implemented a comprehensive climate action plan. When we were doing that plan, we knew that we had food deserts, as Dr. Lim mentioned. We knew that was a significant problem. One of the gifts of COVID is that we did not know that in addition to food deserts, we had thousands of families that were 1 paycheck out of food line. And so we realized that we have maybe some supply chain challenges. Additionally, from the climate perspective, worldwide, depending on diet, the emissions from the food supply for human consumption is about 40%. Less if you're vegan, much less. But that's a big deal. The other thing that's a little scary is that Texas leads the country in billion-dollar-plus weather disasters. We just had another one with our friends down in Houston. The National Climate Assessment indicates that we're looking at 30 to 60 more what they call extreme degree days, which is 100 degrees plus. That with the information that Dr. Loom provided about the percentage of food that's actually eaten locally caused the city to kind of pause. We do have actions in our climate plan around food supply. One of the things that we found as we talked to, when we first started doing our climate plan, we kind of got an inventory of what we were already doing. And I'm really proud to say that we have several departments already working in this realm, and we're hoping to build on their efforts. Our Office of Community Care, which handles our WIC program, serves about 67,000 people a year. out of, I think it's like 17 clinics around the metroplex. Our Office of Economic Development is working with the Dallas Development Fund towards several initiatives with veggie vans, pop-up bodegas, things like that. We are, in addition, and then I'll turn it back so that I don't use up all my time. We are initiating a comprehensive food and urban agriculture plan. We have a separate food advisory council that will be meeting this Friday, and we do participate in the Regional Food Policy Council with MEGDA, and we do participate in the regional work with the COG. They've been fantastic partners for the city. So we have a bunch of things in the works, but maybe not as fully developed as my partners in Plano or Fort Worth.
Thank you, Sue. Amazing. Magna, you did such a great job putting this panel together. Y'all have touched on all 5 of ICLEI's pathways. ICLEI works through 5 primary pathways: low emissions development, resilience, equity, circularity, so reducing waste, and the nature pathway. So y'all have touched on all 5 of those pathways, and it's really exciting to hear about your work. We want to get to the breakout sessions. So what I'm going to ask each panelist to do is to just tee up your greatest challenge. And then when you go off to your breakout room, we'll get some input from the participants on the call today about how they see that challenge and ideas that you might be able to come up with together. So Sue, why don't you start us off? Tell us the greatest challenge you're working on right now. Oh.
It's twofold. A is the amount of sheer need, and B, growing stuff in Texas isn't easy. Farming isn't easy. There are only so many volunteers to work in community gardens. So to implement change to the scale we need to have good local healthy food is going to take investment, and it is it's currently in our too hard pile. We're taking some small bites out of it, but we have an enormous task ahead of us to implement more and healthier local food production and fixing those supply chains to get it to the people that need it.
Great. Thank you. Good one. How about you, Brenda? What would be your greatest challenge?
The first one I was going to say was also on local food production. Like Sue says, we don't have enough farmers. North Texas has a very difficult growing season, so we can't, there's not enough farmers to go around, not enough markets that we can create to be profitable for the farmers that we do have. And I'll say the second one quickly: food retail, high percentages of course, convenience stores that sell all the high processed, high calorie foods. That's what's convenient. So trying to optimize our environment where those healthier options are the ones that are easy for people to make. That's not taking away all the other good stuff that we like to eat, but yeah, just optimizing that food retail so we have some healthier options.
Great, thanks for that. Nicole?
So I would say our biggest challenge at the City of Plano is that we don't have the capacity to have a dedicated staff person focused on this, which is why we're tapping into a lot of existing ongoing projects. We have not yet assessed where our food gap is in Plano, and obviously that's a really good place for us to start, and we just have not been able to do that yet with our current workload. So I look at that as our biggest challenge, is that it is something, like I said, that's in our strategic plan that we really want to sink our teeth into, and we just have not been able to do that yet.
Mm-hmm. Capacity. Yep. Thanks, Nicole. All right. And finally, over to Tamara.
Yes. So right now I have to put on my waste hat. Food waste is one of the largest issues that we are working on for our waste management committee that represents our region. But with that being said, food-related efforts are kind of spread out within the Council of Governments in several different departments. Transportation has a role in that as well. And there has been some work internally on food deserts and some mapping that has been underway. And so I think as we kind of wade into this conversation, kind of at the regional scale now with the Food Policy Alliance, there will be hopefully a role for COG to play as requested by our member governments. And one of those that I wanted to highlight real quickly is an organization called the RISE Coalition, which Plano and Dallas are members of, along with 8 other local governments in our region. It's a new committee that COG has. It's very focused on sustainability. But and I forgot to say what the acronym stands for. It's the Regional Integration of Sustainability Efforts, or the RISE Coalition for short. And one of their key topics is food. And so as you can kind of see, we are all connected. We're all kind of working together regionally already on so many pieces of this whole system puzzle that we have, which is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to identifying opportunities that COG can serve in these other areas, besides just kind of the emphasis right now that we have on the waste. But it's a big issue in our region, so it takes a village.
Definitely. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much to all the panelists. I'm going to turn it over to our tech folks to put you all into breakout rooms, and we'll start to work on those challenges. Thanks again.
Joined with 4 excellent speakers, luminaries in the North Central Texas region on food systems. So I'm joined by Owen Lynch, the founder of Restorative Farms, Valerie Stone Hawthorne, Dr. Valerie Stone Hawthorne, Director of Government Relations at North Texas Food Bank. Anja Sanders, thanks Anja for helping me out with the name in the breakout room. Founder and creative spirit at Feed Oak Cliff and the Dallas Veg Fest. And last but not least, Jenny Ayer, Vice President of Health Strategies at American Heart Association. As with the first panel that Angie moderated, we'll have a number of dialogue questions. You'll each have about a minute, and we know how fast a minute can go, so think in terms of maybe 45 seconds. And we'll start off here with what we're thinking forward. You know, we're thinking ahead in this panel. What the food system in your region or city or county looks like in 10 years from now. What's your vision for the future? And we'll start at the top here with Owen.
Hi. I know most of the panel, but thank you, everyone. I thought we had some really interesting insights, and I think what the issue of we need to have local food production and local jobs producing that food, and how do we create that food, and how do we train farmers, and that's really where that my work in restorative farms are centering in. That if we're going to hub food, if we're going to distribute food, we have to be able to grow it first, but we have to grow it at scale. And we have to be predictable so that we can hit the markets in a reliable fashion. And that requires a systemic, almost factory level approach. So at Restorative Farms, we have a seedling farm, take care of that input barrier. We have 2 hydroponic farms, including a controlled environment. We have a training farm. And today we're actually building an apprentice farm. If you guys indulge me, I'll show you out the window. But this is the, right here, this is the production training farm. Back there is the nursery. Where we're doing the seedlings. Over here, we're putting a hoop, and behind that, we're putting in a whole new farm today for the apprentice farms to produce food. But every single square foot here is calculated to get 8 harvests a year. We have over 12,000 plant sites at level and 6 local community farmers, all from South Dallas, being trained to become professional growers. So that's where we're focusing in our bit. I know people like Andrews and Jenny are focusing where they can serve best too. And I'll let Andrew talk about the indignity of calling a neighborhood a food desert. But we're only going to get rid of that by both having production and delivery and all of us working together collaboratively to create a better system. But we're on track, because if we can produce enough farmers, we can create farms and then we can grow food. That's over a minute. I apologize.
Great, thank you, Owen. I didn't realize we'd get a virtual site visit today. That is awesome. So we'll move on to Valerie, and then we'll hear from Anja. Same question. What's your 10-year food vision, Valerie?
Oh, hi, I'm Valerie Blackburn. I'm the director. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. Oh, sorry, there we go. I'm the Director of Government Relations at the North Texas Food Bank, and I serve on the board of the Dallas Development Fund that was talked about earlier, as well as I am fortunate enough to be the co-chair of the North Texas Food Policy Council that Meghna has so lovely set up. Our food vision at a food bank is much different than what Owen and Anja and other folks are looking at, but they all solve the same problem. We're just approaching it from a different aspect. I mean, obviously the goal of the food bank is to not exist. And so my work at least mainly is on the root causes at the federal and state level, looking at ways that we can move folks from needing emergency food assistance to being sustainable families that don't need a food bank or need a food pantry. So whether that's doing some intermediate things that can then get them into a farm situation, like what Owen has in his whole vision is setting up, or if it's making sure that they can get the most out of their federal dollars that they're going to be able to receive because they're entitled to it. It's looking at it from that end. So it's a little bit different than the actual physical growing of the food. It's more of that root cause underlying issues that we work on here.
Thank you, Valerie. Anja, on to you.
Thank you. My vision for the next 10 years is to have replicated what I'm working on now. I'm the founder and executive director of Feed Oak Cliff, an organization dedicated to the disruption and eventual eradication of food deserts, which I call food apartheid. But toward that end, we are working on something for the end user, which is building a community-based grocery store. And we have a template that we intend to develop. We are starting in the Oak Cliff area. We hope to make this template feasible for people, not only around the city, but around the state and the nation. Our vision is a grocery store, a small grocery store. We're not trying to build super Walmart here, that offers quality, nutritious foods of all kinds. It's got to be responsive to community needs. If they want chips and Cokes, we'll have chips and Cokes, but also an emphasis on healthier offerings. Fresh produce, which is in short supply in the southern sector of Dallas. It's very bizarre, or maybe not so bizarre. But that grocery store will also be adjacent to our other development, which will be a small bistro type restaurant serving healthy takeout food, grab and go food. There's enough hot links, fried chicken, fried fish in the southern sector. So we're going to have something more along the lines of the deli area at Central Market, where you can pick up, $5 or whatever, a healthy meal that you either prepare at home or it's already prepared. That restaurant will be served by a commercial kitchen. Obviously, if you have a restaurant, you have to have a commercial kitchen. Our twist on this is to make that commercial kitchen available at certain times to cottage-based cooks, community cooks who are interested in forming real food entrepreneurship. If you're a cottage cook, you can only sell at festivals and farmers markets. You can't sell anything to Kroger or Royal Blue Grocery or a hospital or a school system. So by this three-part development, we intend to lift not only the physical profile, but the psychological and economic profile of underserved communities in Dallas, and hopefully, eventually, across the nation.
Thank you so much, Anja, the many inspiring examples. We'll move to you next, Jenny.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny. I am the Vice President of Health Strategies for American Heart Association, as was already mentioned, but I'm grateful to be here and grateful to work with all of the people on this panel on a regular basis. And I think that kind of summarizes what I would hope my food systems vision would be in the next 10 years, is something that's more collaborative, has multiple approaches is, not just looking at one solution, but recognizing that one solution is not the answer, that we have to have a multitude of answers to truly address hunger in our city and in our entire area, our country. I think, what even in North Texas, we see, what might work really, really well in, one city, just a couple of blocks down the road, it might not be the perfect answer for another. And so just looking at how we can be more collaborative on our end, the American Heart Association recognizes that if you do not have access to healthy and nutritious foods, your heart is not going to be healthy. And that's for a lifelong journey of chronic disease. If you are a person that doesn't have access to healthy, you're at risk for chronic disease as a young child, and that continues. And that, to Valerie's point, is just added expense and helps keep you in kind of the place that you're in, and not able to really get out of maybe the having to look at all the different things that are keeping you in a type of poverty level. How we can lift people up, give them health, take away other expenses, and I certainly think that starts with access to healthy foods. But I also think that it's incredibly important that we knock down those silos that we're in and try to see how we can bring different players together and different answers so that we can have that larger long-term food system that's helpful and beneficial to everyone.
Thank you, Jenny. Well said. Everyone, thank you for your visions of the future. You did such a good job staying in time that we're in really good shape. Don't need to worry or feel nervous. The next question is, now that we have this vision from each of you, what are the steps it would take to get there? And I think we can start back up at the top with you, Owen, if you don't mind.
Yes, I think people like Andrew are doing great work. I love to be a source to provide her with local fresh food that the community wants. In order to do that, we're going to need multiple farms, not just one farm, but at least 5 or 6 farms working in tandem so that we have the scale and the redundancy in the system to meet the market demand. To do that, we require to make farmers. So what we're focusing on is grow boxes for individual homes to empower people to grow better for themselves. But then also, and the seedling farm to source those, seedling farm to source community gardens so they can grow better, and then produce professional farmers and replicate the farm in a franchise model, have multiple farms to increase the resiliency of the system. So that's kind of how we're trying to, that's where we think as our group that we can best serve. As Jenny said, it's going to take lots of different people doing lots of different things, and we have to work together and specialize and focus on what we can do best. So I really start to see that starting to come together. I think I don't like this phrase, the blessing of COVID, but I do think that it's made bare the absolute necessity of the systemic problem and the work that we all need to do. And we all have good intentions, and we're all working in our area. We just need to start leaning on each other's areas of expertise. And really start working together and doing what we each do best, so we can maximize efficiency. So that's kind of where I am.
Thank you for that, Owen. Valerie, what will it take to achieve your vision?
A lot of prayer and energy drinks for sure. But I think, Jenny hit it on the head. It's all about collaborating these systems together in a way that we are focused on what we do best. Food banks are best food aggregators, right? We take in what we did 126 million pounds of food last year. And a third of that came from retail rescue. So rescuing the food waste that's going through grocery stores that shouldn't be wasting that much food anyway, but we are an outlet for them. And then our government resources. So all the federal and state food programs that come through us, that was another third of our food. And then it's aggregating the donations of the community for fresh produce and all the other things that we're doing. So I think when it comes to the emergency food that is needed in our food pantries and folks that are unable to access either farm grown food that they can get for their families or access high quality meats or access the services that they don't qualify for because their income is $100 above the threshold, right? We have such a steep cliff for federal and state programs that could really help families that are going through a tough time. But one little thing, even having a car that's worth too much, can keep them from accessing those resources. So if we can approach hunger in a way that we're looking at it from all areas in one unit, and that's why I do appreciate food policy councils, because they bring folks together, and we can understand that we're all working on the same problem, but there's so many different buckets of that problem. And it all typically comes down to access to resources, such as financial resources for family, being able to access high quality transportation to get to where you want to go, adequate healthcare for a family so that you're not having to, take out second mortgages on a house that because medical bills are so high. So it's such a complex problem. I appreciate all of us, especially on this panel, that have been in this world for quite a while, because we've seen a lot of the bright ideas that they come in and then they disappear, right? A lot of folks, when they approach anti-hunger work, they come in with such great energy. And then once they realize, oh my God, this is a very complex problem, they just slowly back away and then go do whatever else that they were doing, and something that's a little bit more approachable. So to recognize the vision, it takes all of us. And I think that we do work together very well. We just don't have the time to work together. And I wish we could get more of that.
Thank you, Valerie, for spelling out some challenges too. Anja, I could see you agreeing with some things. Do you want to tell us steps it'll take to achieve your grand vision?
Yes, absolutely. I do agree with many things that have been said. I introduced myself by saying that Feed Oak Cliff is about disrupting and eventually eradicating. It is going to take massive disruption of the systems that have created these situations, these food deserts in the first place. Those are attitudinal systems, they are financial systems, they are political systems. It's a lot. And in the city of Dallas, there are legal and policy barriers to disrupting and eradicating these issues. There are the various isms that I don't even need to go into today. So that is something that is going to have to happen. And to Valerie's point, yes, like most people, I came in and I'm like, okay, we're going to fix it. We're going to build a grocery store. It'll open next year. Well, here I am 6 years later, because naively, I thought that we could attract corporate grocery stores, but for all the reasons that I just named a moment ago, that did not happen. And that's how we've arrived at, okay, let's build our own. It's another high hill to climb. It is also going to take investment, because disinvestment is what created this situation. I live a block from Kimball High School, and I have watched over the last 40 years the change in the demographics of the students, which signal the change in the demographics of the area, which signaled disinvestment by grocery corporations, quality retail, mainstream restaurants, and what has replaced that has been not so good for the health or psyche of the community. So it's a massive task. God grant me the time on earth to get this done, and all these other people who are working on it. We'll just have to keep plugging at it. We'll have to keep plugging at it. And I don't think anybody on this panel is, as the old spiritual used to say, no ways tired. We're going for it.
Thank you, Anja. Over to you, Jenny. What are the steps?
Oh goodness, well, a combination of what everyone said. Certainly, what did Val say? Prayers and energy drinks and or coffee. But also, I think in addition to everything, I also think it's an awareness to me and an acknowledgement of the complexities, like Val said, of hunger. As Anja and Owen were saying, there's a lot of intricacies around local food and local food production. But to me, I think oftentimes we put hunger in its own little, well, not little, but its own category. And we don't acknowledge the fact that being hungry impacts whether or not, your ability to get full-time employment, your ability, your health, overall health and well-being. I mean, and it goes on and on. There are so many different things that impact it. From our point of view, and I think the three people on this panel with me are probably going to get tired of me saying it, but I think very much so. And what we're trying to do at the Heart Association is bring in that clinical perspective. How can we have other partners that might not be addressing hunger with the people they're seeing every day, start bringing in and raising the awareness and the connection. If a person comes in that has had diabetes for years and it's uncontrolled, there are steps you can do to help control diabetes with the food that you're eating. Many people don't necessarily have access to the food that they should be eating, but how can we start working to develop the desire for that type of food? I think we have to be certainly aware that food habits are, it's not something that you change overnight. I think Anne just said people like chips and Cokes. I certainly do too. But when you have chronic disease, how can we manage that with a food as medicine approach? Val and I have had multiple conversations about how can we utilize the great resources of the food bank to at least start introducing healthy foods. I've talked to Owen about this, as well, food prescription programs. I think it's, for me, when I see a collaborative food system, I see more than just food people at the table. I see our physicians and our doctors, bringing it in so that a person, doesn't get away from that healthy food messaging or nutritious food messaging. And then on the other side of it, you have the food access groups that are trying to make it so that while we can give vouchers to start developing those healthy food habits and making that connection, we can see that sustainability because now they have access to it at home. And to Andrew's point, they're consumers and they're constant consumers that are bringing, more people to the table and more businesses to the table to bring those, the food that we need into the communities that need it. So that was a lot of speak, but I do think that we have to start looking at how do we get out of our box. I talked about silos, but even within ourselves, I think there's silos within the hunger community. And then I think we've siloed hunger sometimes as a topic, and we should be letting people talk about there's other things that are impacting hunger. And we need everybody to be working towards a common goal to really make an impact.
Wonderful, Jenny. Thank you so much for that. With 2 minutes to spare, this is great. A lot of insights that you all crammed into 25 minutes, and wow, that can fly by. So I'll just leave this last question open for anyone to answer before we break into the second round of breakout rooms. And that's what brings you hope or inspires you? Anyone free to jump in.
Well, I think the way that the entire anti-hunger community rallied during COVID, and I get sick of bringing up COVID because it's still with us, but I think it inspired me to see how many people really made that connection about what lack of food can do to a family and what lack of economic success can do to a family. You lose a job. I mean, so many people are one paycheck away from hunger, right? We say that very often, and we saw it in the forefront. So I think it has brought the conversation to a very national platform that we are the United States, and we need to get busy on this problem because it's absolutely not acceptable.
What brings me hope is the people on this panel and the people in this group. When I started talking about this 5 or 6 years ago, people were like, what are you talking about? The term food desert was not well known, and to too many people, they don't understand it now. So the proliferation of voices in this conversation is a positive thing. Also, the growing awareness that this conversation is about more than hunger, because food deserts are not defined by a complete lack of food. They are defined more by access to the food. So it's not only a hunger situation, it's an accessibility situation. And the more people that recognize that and talk about that, and recognize, as Jenny said, that there's an educational component, because you don't change eating habits overnight. And, you know, she and I have had numerous conversations about how when we open this restaurant, we're going to have classes and American Heart is going to be there teaching. So that's what gives me hope and the will to continue this fight.
Great, Anja. Thank you so much. We'll have those be our closing remarks there, and great ones they are. So to set the scene, we're all going to break up again into our second and final round of breakout rooms, and we'll be unpacking these same questions. So think about your 10-year vision for the future, and what steps it would take to get there. So we'll do that for about 25 minutes and then get back together for some kind of concluding remarks, and finish up our day together. So thanks. Over to you, Sarah, to kind of send us where we need to go.
Trying to remove spotlight. Well, okay, thank you so much. We are right on time. We have, I guess, 10-15 more minutes. So thank you so much all for participating in the breakout rooms. I wanted to take a few minutes to see if you all have, you know, key findings or key thoughts to share from the conversations, the keynote speakers that we had, and everything that you have been following in terms of conversation regarding to food systems and the UN Food Summit, that we can capture for the entire audience.
I have two bulletins. I think that both of our breakout sessions, we kind of distilled from those conversations that I think everyone can get behind. And one of those is how important it is to involve the community in the conversations and in the planning process of developing these goals and strategies. You can have a wonderful solution, but you can waste a lot of time and resources if you don't involve the community. So one of the key quotes was, the community supports what it helps build. Another great kind of quote, if you will, that we got from our group breakout recently was, without a champion, the program will never succeed. And from that, we want to draw hope and inspiration from that, in the sense that, you know, you really are the change maker, and it's important for you to be involved, because these programs or these goals may not be met without you. So the work that we're doing is so important, and it's so important to be a champion.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That's very kind and, you know, thoughtful of you to say that and acknowledge the efforts of everyone in the room, because, you know, everyone can attest to this and agree with this, that we have so many challenges for the North Texas region with the growth that's been happening. And this is just one part of the conversation. But the needle does not move until people come together, right? And I remember Allison mentioned in her opening remarks that coming together, engagement, and having a common goal to work towards is as important. And the conversation is much more beyond hunger, right? It's a conversation that impacts the community at so many levels. So I'm so grateful to all the people who have been part of the conversation, the NTFPA, for the past few months, and being involved in the strategy sessions and coming together today to add value to this important discussion that we are having. Thank you, Sarah.
I think one of the key things is that things are working, right? Everyone says we need to move the needle. The needle is moving. It's just not moving as quick as we really want as humans, right? But I think we do need to build upon the successes of what has been happening and realize what doesn't work, what can work, and use that. I also realized in this that I can't draw. That was like the best I could do. So after seeing those diagrams,
keep your day job, Valerie.
Oh my God, Ashley, it was so bad. I was like, I could draw that. No, it's real bad. So
yeah, no,
sorry.
That's okay. Mine is worse.
That's hilarious. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Valerie. And I agree. I mean, we are all moving the needle. It's how you define what is moving and what's not moving, right? I mean, if everybody succeeded in everything that they are doing, then there's nothing to aspire or work towards, right? It's a moving target. And we had really interesting discussion in our breakout session where people are talking about education and having science-based targets to move towards this conversation on food system at a regional level. So using something of a global framework as the UN SDGs for our community, it is helpful. It gives some framework, some guidance on what needs to be done. Anybody else would like to share their thoughts so we can capture it? You know, your key takeaway from the breakout sessions or the keynote speakers that you've heard since this morning?
I think we also want to capture what Jenny said, that we have to work together, not in our silos or in our respective areas of expertise, but bring that expertise together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important to work in silos, because I mean, just the collective knowledge that we have of everybody in this room talking today is immense. And we have to take that conversation and that knowledge beyond this room to others. And I also feel, you know, students have to be an important part of the conversation and, you know, learn from, I guess, our mistakes.
Yeah, in the spirit of bringing people together, I think a common theme that resonated was a cliche, but when there's a will, there's a way. And the things that people are already doing and the way that we learn from that and also replicate it and build from that is, as Valerie said, like we're already starting to move the needle in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks, Katie, for that comment. She says, one thing that helps me when it feels like things aren't moving fast enough is focusing on what we can do today. So, you know, that's so true, literally one day at a time, because there is so much to be done. Anybody else would like to share their thoughts?
Hi, Meghna. I can jump in here, and it's kind of a thread through a number of thoughts and thinking about the global work that's happening at the UN Food System Summit. And Peter and others had talked about how this is kind of a contentious deal with how the stakeholders were brought together, and a feeling that big corporate entities and agricultural entities are really driving the process and conversation at the beginning, rather than the community voices being like central to how that global work operates. And so I was thinking a lot about like inclusivity and whose voices are not at the table. And Anja brought up a great point that like it's great to see all of you again, you know, and she's in a fortunate position to be collaborating with most of the panelists today. And someone else talked about this being a really tight-knit community, and that is a huge benefit to what's happening in the region. And it just got me thinking, like, is it at some point like the community is so tight-knit that people are being missed, you know, and who's not at the table, and more like operationalized, like what needs to happen to make sure that those other people are showing up to an event like today, that they're on a panel and feel like, hey, I'm among friends and I know everyone here. And so I don't have these answers, but just like to point out that there's an awesome thing going in North Central Texas with this kind of community that came together today, and thinking about how to, you know, broaden that beyond the usual folks we always see, you know?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean,
no, it's absolutely. I mean, I oftentimes start my talks with fundamental truths about hunger. And one of the bullet points is the vast majority of people working on the hunger problem are not actually hungry. And of that, most of them have never been hungry. Right. So when we accept those truths, we can start realizing exactly what you said, who is not at the table, who are we not talking to, and stop imposing what we think is a solution onto our perspective of the issue.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. I mean, how do we bring more people to the conversation? Because I think people should not see this as a threat or a competition. That's not what we are trying to do, right? It is, we are working towards something that helps the community, and you do that by bringing the community together. And it's a collaborative effort. You know, collective impact really does make a big difference in the long runs. And in the Kale's breakout room, we were also talking about how not to have a silo thinking towards this, you know, applying the systems thinking. Everything is part of the puzzle. When you're working on food system, you're, you know, working on climate change and so many other issues that all the cities are working and tackling. I mean, Katie talked about the climate action plan that the city of Dallas is having, or the, you know, projects that Sarah and Nicole at the city of Plano are working on, and, you know, the waste management projects that's going on through COG, that is really important, and research and technology is an equally important part of this. You know, yesterday we had a guest lecture from a professor at UTA who was talking about how food distribution is an equally big problem, and we need innovative and disruptive technology like Uber for food distribution, and how do we get there, you know? So these conversations definitely do help. Anybody else would like to share their thoughts and key takeaways from today?
Yeah, I would like to share. I'm Jill with Gooder, and we're based in Atlanta. We do work in Dallas, Fort Worth, and it was just really exciting to hear what North Central Texas is doing. And I wanted to call out Owen's statement that we need to produce farmers. I thought that was really interesting, because it's really about the people working on the issues, even though we're all focused on food and getting food to people. So I just really appreciate the energy and solutions that are coming out today. And just the cross-fertilization. And I was wondering if there's a way to keep the dialogue going, or if there's a way to share solutions that we have now between each other.
Yeah, you can reach out to me. You know, we have this North Texas Food Policy Alliance where we have working groups. You know, Valerie and Stephanie, they are the chairs and co-chairs of that group. So we would be happy to have more people participate and devote their time to help with this and take the conversation forward.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks. Yes, we will be recording. Yes, I do want to address that comment. So the entire session has been recorded. And as you can see, we are summarizing the breakout room conversations and the notes from the keynote speakers today. So give us a couple of days. We will summarize everything, and we'll be ready to share everything with you via email or Google Doc. But yes, everything will be accessible and provided to you. All right, I guess we are 5 minutes ahead of time. If anybody has anything else to add, otherwise we can conclude. I know everybody is busy and it's close to lunchtime, but I really, really wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for their enthusiasm, their participation, and an open mind to ideas, to suggestions, to working together, because you know, nothing is easy and nothing is done. It's a journey that we have started, and it's exciting so far. And just in this process, we have met so many people, even living in North Texas, and the world of sustainability is a really close-knit world. But you know, in the past few months, we have met people that we have never worked together or collaborated together. So that has really helped. But I'm very grateful for your participation, collaboration, contribution, passion, enthusiasm, and the positive attitude that you bring to the table. Very grateful for your time, to all the panelists, facilitators today, and to Sarah and Karina. Thank you all. We'll be hanging out here if you have any questions or need answers. But thank you so much for your time.
I do have a quick question. How do I get a link to look at more of Katrina's drawings from today? I'd love to see some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah, you have access to the Dropbox folder that I sent in my email yesterday. You can view it there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you.